Fourth oral question, the Earl of Clancarty.
My Lords, I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
The Government has no plans to introduce legislation to permit artefacts, including the Parthenon sculptures, to be returned. National museums are prevented by legislation from deaccessioning objects unless broadly they are duplicates or unfit for retention. There are two exceptions for human remains less than 1,000 years old and for Nazi-era looted objects. Partnerships and loans have been successfully used as a way for museums to share objects with other countries and museums.
My Lords, there is a case for amending the existing legislation in a narrow way to allow our national museums to return permanently certain artefacts to their country of origin on a case-by-case basis, none more so than the Parthenon sculptures, so that the frieze and other sculptures can be seen in a museum close to the original environment and, importantly, in as complete a state as possible, as this is the work of a single master builder, Phidias, and his workshop. Surely, aesthetically, then, this is the right solution. Will the Government amend the legislation to allow this and other returns to happen?
I can only repeat to the Noble Lord that the Government has no plans to change the law or introduce legislation to permit objects, including the Parthenon sculptures, to be returned.
It's a throwback to the time when national museums were little more than adjuncts of the Office of Works, and as they gained their independence, the government at the time quite rightly wanted stock back. But the trustees and leaders of our national museums have shown, admittedly with substantial government support over the years, that they are more than capable of running their own affairs. This legislation is well out of date. There is precedent. The Reviewing Committee for the Export of Works of Art works extremely well in reviewing objects that are poised to leave the country and deciding that they are part of our heritage. Surely setting up something like that to review contested objects would be a wonderful way to independently assess these very contentious issues.
The Noble Lord will be aware that the British Museum operates independently of the Government, and so decisions relating to their collections are within the law a matter for their Board of Trustees. I know that the British Museum recognises the strength of feelings on this issue, and the museum is actively pursuing the possibility of a new partnership approach with Greece, but I just repeat that we don't, as a government, have any plans to amend the law.
My lords, the noble lady, the Minister, I know, thinks deeply about these issues. So will she please assure the House that the intention of the government not to legislate in relation to the Elgin marbles doesn't extend to the bones, the modified, sometimes hideously modified bones of indigenous peoples such as the Naga, held in our national collections like the British Museum. She will ensure that the law is modified or clarified to make it clear that those items should be returned. Their retention is deeply offensive to indigenous peoples who lost their ancestors' bones in the course of colonial wars and occupation, and who now seek a decent return of their remains.
So the majority of museums are able to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis in relation to restitution of human remains. I think that the Noble Lord my noble friend will be aware that I am planning to have a conversation with a meeting with my noble friend Baroness Merrin to discuss issues relating to the Human Tissues Act. There is human remains guidance for museums issued by the Department for Culture, Media and Sport in 2005, which covers a legal and ethical framework for the treatment of human remains. I do understand the strength of feeling of the Noble Lord, and I'm happy to have a further conversation with him to discuss this further.
In supporting the Noble Earl's plea to the government to look at this issue, could I draw to her attention also the fact that there are artefacts such as the Ap Hugh manuscripts of Welsh music that are in, I believe, the British Library and been there for many, many years, that are of little interest to those coming to the British Library, but would be of great interest in Wales. Could she possibly consider writing to some of these institutions to see whether some sort of arrangement can be reached to meet the very reasonable pleas that have been made in this House already this afternoon?
The loan of documents, whether it's from the British Museum or whether it's from the British Library, is routine. And clearly, I think I'm happy to raise this particular point with the British Library, but clearly it does operate independently of the government, so a decision on that would be for its trustees.
Here, the Minister confirmed that the government has no plans to change the law. And she's right, we don't need any change in the laws to allow our national museums to lend or borrow items with their partners around the world. Some of the Parthenon sculptures in the care of the British Museum have been loaned overseas before, and we were all delighted to hear that the loan of the Bayer tapestry, first discussed in 2018, is going ahead. Would the Noble Baroness agree that for any loan to be consistent with the British Museum Act of 1963 or with its open individual export licence, any borrowing party must acknowledge the museum's ownership of those items and agree to return them at the end of the loan period?
The Parthenon sculptures were lawfully acquired and legally owned by the trustees of the British Museum. By definition, any loan agreement acknowledges that. The requirement of a loan is that the item be returned, and assurances as to the return would be provided.
My Lords, in March there was a short debate which addressed the sale of human remains at public auctions, and following yet another disrespectful online auction recently, might I please ask the Noble Lady, the Minister, what progress has been made since that debate on that matter, and what are her future plans for banning the sale of human remains?
Like the Noble Lady, I viewed the footage which was online of the sale of human remains. I believe she refers to, and it was really incredibly shocking. And I did, having met with my noble friend Lord Boateng and the Noble Lady, commit to convening a cross-departmental meeting with ministers and officials to discuss the issue. I have spoken briefly to my noble friend Baroness Merrin about this, and the meeting has been scheduled for immediately after summer recess, and I'm happy to report back to the Noble Lady then.
My Lords.
Labour.
My Lord. Thank you. Yes, I think I got the message.
The Lords is to ask a question first. So first, then we'll have my friend.
My Lords, the Minister has been rolling out excuses for no action on the Parthenon sculptures that have been used by ministers of all parties for the last 50 years, to my knowledge at least. But the role of museums are changing, and there is a great capacity for what I would describe as museum diplomacy. Is she aware what massive gain it would be for our relations with Greece if, and where there is a will, there is a way, if we were to be able to return the Parthenon statues and to work with Greece on a celebration of Greek sculpture and art at the British Museum? That's the way museums should be moving, not as receptacles of our imperial past.
The UK and Greece have a really strong bilateral relationship built on shared values and history, and we greatly value the friendship that exists between our peoples today. I would question the Noble Lord's definition of an excuse. It's a reason and it's a view, not an excuse.
My Lords, I thank my noble friend the Minister for that answer and for all the subsequent answers. I just wonder if she could clarify, if there is an object of religious significance to its country of origin, where in a museum here it's seen as a work of art, is there not a case for amending or at least considering ways of adapting legislation? Because otherwise, whilst it's not the government's decision, a museum director is not completely free to make a decision if they are constrained by existing legislation that may have been made many years ago.
We don't, in answer to my noble friend, have any current plans to change the legislation. The noble Lord Parkinson talked about loans, and I think that in many cases these artefacts can be loaned, and we'd support that. And clearly the Bayeux Tapestry has been mentioned, and we're very fortunate in this country to be able to borrow items from other countries. We get that on the basis that people know we're going to return it, even if we'd like to keep them.
My Lords, that concludes oral questions for today.